So Chris and I, along with Brent Rubin, who's another co-author on the book, work in a Center for Organizational Development and Leadership, and we provide programs and consultation in organizational advancement and leadership excellence for units across the university. So this book is an attempt to distill key leadership and communication insights from the text for groups across the university, and then any other outside readers who have an interest in leadership and communication.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of the inspiration for the book came from when Brent was working on developing the curriculum for the Leadership Living Learning community, and
Absolutely.
we couldn't find a text that was really appropriate for someone who wants an entry-level introduction to leadership.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, the point that Chris just made, and then a few of us, Richard DeLisi, Brent, and myself, worked on a book for higher ed audiences, a guide for leaders in higher education, and there were a number of higher ed examples in the text, but a number of the core principles and the core concepts from the text, particularly regarding the intersection of leadership and communication, we thought had a lot of utility for anyone with an interest in the subject, not just those focused on higher education. So we really tried to distill the key takeaways from the higher ed version in this more generic text. Yeah, you have a lot of experience with this.
And you as well. I'm teaching at the School of Communication and Information. I teach a course called Leadership in a Digital Context. And I also helped develop the curriculum for a new Leadership Living Learning community here on campus. I was developing the first year course for that program. So I feel like, and I've been working with Ralph and Brent for a long time. I was also a pre-doctoral leadership fellow. That's a program run here at Rutgers University, and it covers, we take in grad students, doctoral students from across the university, and that's how I met Ralph.
Yeah, and I've always had a real interest in leadership. I mean, as an undergrad student, I was actively involved in leadership roles. One of my first jobs, my most recent job actually at Villanova University, was assistant director and associate director for an office for student involvement, where I was in charge of developing a center for student leadership and different leadership programs. So I have a real passion for undergraduate leadership education. The role I'm in now focuses more on faculty and staff leadership development, but through Sky, having an opportunity to focus on teaching the courses and the redesign of the courses in the community leadership specialization was a lot of fun to work on. Pretty extensive literature review from sources that we may have been familiar with, but then also finding newer sources. One of the challenges is leadership, like communication, is so widely discussed, and there's so much that you could focus on, but we didn't want the text to be so expansive that the general theme would get lost in it. So we tried to keep the chapters accessible and to keep it at a length that would be readable for undergraduate students and other readers. But I think the real big thing was finding contemporary sources and bringing in contemporary examples that would be relevant for a topic as popular as leadership.
I know for me, one thing that I learned, I feel really fortunate to be able to work with Ralph and Brent. As a PhD student, you do so much academic writing, writing for a scholarly audience. So working with Brent and Ralph, they really taught me how to kind of distill those theoretical and scholarly ideas down and write for a more accessible audience. So that's what I learned. Thank you.
Well, I could think of three things. One, the time for studying leadership, although it's been so widely written about and discussed, I think the time for studying it and practicing leadership that's purposeful and intentional and that benefits the people that we serve is really critical in this moment. So I hope that that's a big takeaway for readers. Secondly, we can't fully understand leadership without looking at sort of the nuances of communication. So a communication-oriented approach is the answer that we find to be, it really resonates with sort of how we understand leadership and the challenges that leaders face. And finally, there are a number of concepts and principles and strategies associated with leadership that are challenging. There's quite a broad portfolio of things that a leader needs to become proficient in, and hopefully the book exposes readers to the kinds of topics that fall under the broader umbrella of leadership.
And I would add to that, I hope our book communicates the idea that anyone can develop leadership skills and develop their competencies, so that it's not an idea just for a select few.
Well, Brent's not here, so we'll have to find something that he would also share. But I think we've developed group writing. We talked about this a lot.
Yes.
So I finished the PhD program last year. Chris is in the process of writing her dissertation. When you're writing as an individual student in a PhD program, it can become a little bit isolating, right? Or isolated. You're sort of on your own, sort of pursuing this research. Group writing and team writing is a much different challenge. But when you all sort of share an enthusiasm for the subject matter, a real genuine commitment to one another and respect for one another, and then you begin to put words and thoughts into writing, and then like constructively offer feedback to one another, it becomes it's a really surprisingly a fun and enjoyable process. And then you see the finished product, and it's just really humbling.
Yeah, I think we work really well together.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's my perception.
Yeah.
That when one person is busy, the other person can pick up the slack, and like Ralph's picking up the slack for me now.
No, well, and because of the work that we're doing in the center here too, it's one thing to write a text on leadership and communication, and then it's another thing when you can begin to apply a lot of this with the programs that we're offering for faculty and staff and graduate students at the university, and then through the courses in Sky to be able to really make some connections between these concepts and the kinds of insights that we're hoping to offer to students in the classroom. It becomes an applied book and not just sort of a scholarly text that we could think about, but hopefully will shape and influence behaviors as well.
Awesome. So if there's anything else you want to add, you can, but if not, then that's all I have.
I would add, I'm looking forward to, we have, Ralph keeps a list of ideas for books, so I'm looking forward to working on future books with Ralph and Brent.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I would add too is we are, as I noted earlier, the topic is so broad and there's so much written on leadership that inevitably we didn't cover everything, nor was that the goal of the text. But if any students or instructors who use the book have feedback on it, we are very, very open to incorporating feedback to strengthen this text in future editions.
Awesome. Thank you.